everybody? I hope everybody at home is having a good day. I hope your day's been good. On today's episode of Get Lit, we're going to be talking about AI and how it's entering the classroom, changing the way our classrooms work, and how it's really affecting the young people in our generation right now. I'm joined today by Dr. Jennifer Millie-Ray. She's the head of the Noyce program. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, Dr. Millie-Ray.
Yeah, thank you, Jacob. Super glad to be on the Get Lit podcast. So glad you're interviewing me. Yes, I am Dr. Jennifer Millie-Ray. I am a professor in the education department, associate professor in the education department here at Sul Ross State University. And I am also the program coordinator of our graduate education technology program. And my background, I have a PhD in learning technologies and cognitive systems. So I'm kind of an information data scientist by trade. And I really get into STEM literacy. So super excited about this topic and glad to talk with you today.
Yes, ma'am. Let's go ahead and get informed real quick. So my first question is, where did AI come from? Where is it originating from?
Good question. You know, a lot of people don't realize AI has been around since the 50s. If you've ever used spell check, you have used artificial intelligence, and it kind of goes back to those big mainframe computers. Dr. Turing kept asking you, hey, can these machines think? And we had kind of early rule-based programming where we were using pattern recognition systems. And we use these things for, to take us to space, really. And one of the people who got us, a group of people that got us to space were, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Hidden Figures, but it is a story about how this whole computer revolution came to be. And that computer power exploded due to the space race. So today's classroom really stands on generations. So AI is not a new phenomenon. It really stands on decades of computer science and cognitive science research, which really does look at statistics. And so if you've ever used spell check, you have used AI. And I am a child of the 90s, and so we were using spell check for many decades before we had what we call open source AI. And of course, if with the arrival of OpenAI, that really has changed everything. ChatGPT, when that became open to the public, I think there was kind of a misconception that this was a new phenomenon. What's different was it became more accessible. It became more conversational. It became open. And by that means that there was an explosion of new lab technology that the community could participate in to create new apps and new types of technologies that are really going to transform education and is transforming education quickly. So we're shifting from a specialized kind of lab technology setting to something where every student, every educator, every researcher can hopefully, and this is what we really wanted to happen in the late 90s, early 2000s, when I first became an educator, we were really wanting this whole idea of using the internet to make education available and freely accessible for everyone. And that was really kind of the idea of also this OpenAI, because we were hoping that it would help improve accessibility so that all learners, no matter what language, no matter what background, what culture, could use technology to explore ideas, to generate content, and think more critically about information. That's a very complicated and kind of controversial topic, because we're really kind of not only thinking about patterns and computer science, but then how does that relate to education and social science? And really, sometimes we have developers who have a really strong background in mathematics or programming and using the tool, but they don't have a good background in cognitive science, which is how we think. And that's really my jam, is really merging those two areas. So beyond language generation, which, when we think about ChatGPT, that is a language generation AI tool. But there are a lot of other forms of AI that is shaping our world. We have a lot of different computer vision systems that are literally interpreting images and video very quickly to self-driving cars. I was watching a show last night, where Sylvester Stallone, I don't know if you've ever seen this show, Tulsa King. It's kind of popular right now. And he gets into this self-driving car, to medical imaging, to using predictive and analytical models to identify patterns like climate science, finance. And we even have different types of sensors and movements and different embodied AI components that can help really improve learning, and how we kind of merging what we call a mixed reality system, where we're merging the real world with the digital world. So our whole idea and concept of the physical environment will soon be changing.
Right. So that's what I've noticed, outside of the classroom, in real life, work. I feel like this open AI is taking over really, and a lot of the working class and different jobs are going to be replaced by technology. And since you've been an educator for a really long time, my question for you is, how have you noticed AI in the classroom? Like, is it coming in fast? What are the downsides that you're seeing? What are the good sides that you're seeing about students utilizing
That's an excellent question. How is AI showing up in our world and in our classrooms? I would kind of push back and say, jobs are shifting. I don't know. So, and they're changing. And so a lot of the jobs that, and a lot of the ways that we prepared students in higher education will have to change. And so how does that look like in the classroom? Well, one is, we've talked about personalized learning on this podcast before, but with AI, that's becoming even more powerful. What does that mean? Well, we have adaptive tools that are going to greatly enhance how we really think about reading, specifically in math. We call this literacy, sim literacy pathways, how we can provide instant scaffolding so it can adjust the platform based on your performance, and also surface misconceptions. So personalized learning can really explode, and I think that will really help us. Honestly, it will really enhance how we can help students learning gaps from the pandemic. So there's a lot of benefits with this. In addition, we have the teacher now still being the center of the classroom. We want to, you hear this idea of humanizing AI. And that is something we do want to keep talking about. Humans are really, we are important into the classroom. And so that relationship component, I don't think is ever going to change. Because it is an artistic endeavor. Teaching is both a science and an artistic endeavor. So what does that mean? That means that the teacher will have a co-assistant, a co-pilot, a assistant to maybe help with drafting rubrics, creating differentiation tasks, summarizing data, helping with feedback, really helping with the grading process. I mean, there's so many ways that you can use AI for productivity, to increase your productivity as a teacher. And then I think also with AI, one of the big things that I want to focus on is helping educators improve their disciplinary literacy. And so really that's my background, is disciplinary literacy is really by 5th grade up until adult learning. We are thinking about how literacy impacts you in the field and your discipline. What that means is, how do we use scientific tools in the biology classroom? What does it look like to write as a historian? How do we analyze data points and use data to improve visualization as a mathematician? So this means that our job tasks in different content fields are going to change. And so in science, using visualization, to communicate your experimentation and using those types of tools. In social studies, maybe we think about biasness and ethics and those types of things. In math, we might be thinking about proofs and models and how we can use AI to improve those pathways as well, multiple solutions pathways. And so I do think that our entire field is going to rapidly changing, and that is one of the areas that it's critical that we as educators and as teachers are lifelong learners. And and because I've always been in the technology kind of realm in Texas, I've always had to learn very quickly, because when you're teaching with technology and you're teaching others to use technology, you have to use the latest gadget. That's something very common in my field. However, if I was a history teacher or, a different type of educator, there was a time where that you didn't have to be so current, right? You might go to a yearly conference, you have professional development, but now that is going to become even more important, that we become lifelong learners, not just as teachers, but also as adults, because we just have to always retool and stay current so that we're future ready in our skill sets.
Okay. So with students now able to utilize a tool like ChatGPT and all these other AI tools online, how are we planning to really assess what they're learning? How are we planning to make sure they're actually maintaining some of the stuff they're reading?
Yeah, this is one of the biggest issues of our day is assessment. And I will say one of the good news is assessment is going to totally change in the next few years. What I mean by that is from having a one-off test, meaning we're teaching to a test. We also hear a lot of this. A lot of the public will criticize how traditional public schools are teaching to a test. I will, say with AI, we're going to have a lot of changes with how we assess, and what that means is there's ongoing evidence that we're going to use micro reflections, lots of hands-on, a lot of artifacts, a lot of products, a lot of oral. Storytelling, but also using AI feedback loops so that we get instant feedback. Our brain learns best when we have instant feedback. And also our brains are changing due to technology. So what that means is teachers will kind of shift from creating assessments, to maybe interpreting data. Students will demonstrate transfer in real tasks. And so your assessment's going to be built into your learning platform. You're not going to really have probably an assessment at the end of your learning. The AI-driven innovations, there's a lot of innovations in assessments right now. This is probably the biggest growing trend that I don't think many people are talking about. One of the ones I want to really hit on is language assessment. I feel like that's going to be a game changer in our field, because with AI, we have been able to bring in recently speech recognition technology that has really brought transformative change to speaking and pronunciation assessment and language learning. So what that means is I can use Microsoft Teams, for instance, and I can use the reading program, and I can literally have a computer in real time grade a child's ability to read proficiently, their reading fluency, and get feedback instantly, and a real-time analysis of speech patterns. So now the AI is not just using written language, but it's able to use a multimodality approach. So I can basically think about speech patterns, annotations, pronunciation. We can use that multimodality in our analytics, meaning we're able to use computer vision with AI to look at the senses. So I can literally use AI platforms to measure all kinds of facial expressions right now, gestures, physiological responses, and that really means that we can now, for the first time, give an assessment on how students are engaging in what they're learning, test anxiety. We can look at different types of emotional responses during the learning. So this means that testing will become more of an adaptation process, not kind of an end goal. So we're not going to be, teaching to a state assessment. It's really going to be kind of built into the learning in the near future. And this will completely shift how we think about assessment. And honestly, I think standardized testing will eventually fade away. Instead of one-shot exams, you're going to have continuous, authentic assessment. You are going to be able to capture how people think, how they react, their physical, emotions, how they create, how they grow over time. And you're going to be able to track that over time through projects, through reflections, through problem solvings. And that focus will shift from memorizing, and repeating information to really demonstrating, hopefully, an understanding and adaptability and in the real world. So I do think that whole idea of assessment is already changing and is going to rapidly change in the near future. So I think in 5 years, we will see a whole different way of how we assess learning.
Okay. So I've been seeing the change here now that I'm in college, but just 4 years ago when I was in high school, there, of course, like you said, AI has been around, but there wasn't really an open source like ChatGPT, Copilot, and all these other tools.
Right.
Do you happen to know what it's looking like at the high school level? I've communicated with a couple of our scholars right now that are doing school teaching as their final block, and they're telling me they see it a lot.
Yeah, the Noyce scholars are starting to see this, and we're teaching the Noyce scholars specifically on how, not all apps are created equally. Not everyone who develops a technology, an education technology product, has that cognitive science background that really understands about how we learn. There are good and bad examples. So we have to really think about the discipline. And so some of the things that the students are doing is they're thinking about, okay, what are different ways that I can use, for instance, the feedback piece. We have different tools that do that better. So there are tools like the Khan Academy. There's tools like Microsoft Solver. There's Wolfram Alpha. They do have AI components in those tools. However, some of them behave differently. And so what we want to try to teach our scholars and teach educators is how to really evaluate the learning technology. So what does this look like? Well, students can learn how they can integrate that AI component in the real world. One of the things that I really want to explore this summer, I'm hoping that we have an AI kind of field experience this summer, is students can write small Python scripts to pull in, for instance, weather data and really look at temperature, precipitation, wind, on a schedule, and you can write a script, and you can have that script, and you can put something out in the field, and it can collect data continuously. And in the recent experiences, we've had students able to do those types of projects, but they've had to go out themselves to collect the data. Imagine if you had a machine out there doing that continuously, and then using that data to then create a lesson where the students are plotting the trends, looking at statistics, thinking about the model, thinking about the visualization aspect of how we would communicate that, the fluency of communication. How would we put that in a report? It's an authentic, it can be an authentic STEM literacy experience where we're taking the literacy component, matching it with code, matching it with ethics, okay? And then having the students learn how to communicate in a future-ready type way. And so an example might be, build a 30-day weather dashboard and collect data for 30 days, explain a spike or dip. Why did the data spike or dip? Compare your conclusion to 2 other sources. That might be an example of how you could use it in the field.
Okay. How about in the medical field or the biology field?
We'll just give it biology, but for medical, AI is really taking off in the medical industry. So AI supports image analysis. So, a lot of pattern spotting, a lot of decision support. And so what you could do in class is you could simulate how these models are reaching a suggestion and require the students to explain the model. Some of these models also are very biased. So I was at a training. I have to constantly be learning. I was at a training last spring, and I got to go through a training exercise where it was a medical example of how the data was being manipulated and biased. And so getting students to maybe think about that, and because a clinical judgment stays human, and I think, we really want to think about it's you as a medical professional will need to know how to evaluate that type of technology in the field, and make a judgment from what the data is giving you. Okay. And so I think that is one way that you might could introduce it in those types of courses at the high school level.
Of course, the AI is getting so advanced, not only with the open option of having resources in your fingertips, with also videos and pictures you're making. They're releasing videos now where it looks really realistic. How would you explain to students that these visuals they're seeing can be misleading, that what they see isn't always true or correct?
I've even gotten, scammed before, right? Media, this is a big issue. So this is really what we call media literacy or data literacy. And I think data science is going to continue to be a really important growing field. So you can have the same data set, but use that data set to tell many different stories. And I think that is a critical way that we can teach about data literacy. You can really cherry pick your ranges. You can use misleading color skills to change perceptions. And really, I think a good task for high school teachers to really explore is how students might replot data, how they might change the colors, how they might change the label assumptions, and what does this chart not tell you? Okay, have those types of conversations with your students. Or you might even have students, fix a misleading chart. Okay, and then give a 2-minute video of what, how they might correct this. I think sometimes we just look at these charts and we don't really ask those types of questions. And as a teacher, we really need to start guiding students to really rethink some of that. And, going on to data science. So, we talked a little bit about, that is an example of data science, but think about media literacy. Really, that's going to become more of a foundational topic, not an elective. It's already in the TEKS curriculum. I hope that we're really talking about that in all of our courses. And we are equipping our pre-service teachers on this topic of media literacy. And education leaders also need a greater understanding of data and information science. What AI can do as a co-teacher, students will have to learn how to question where the data comes from. How are these algorithms shaping what they see online, and how are they testing for accuracy and bias? And I do think that letting students analyze real data streams like weather, health, and social trends, and helping them visualize how those can be kind of adjusted to tell a different story. Can really help them think more critically about AI and not just copy and paste, but really think more critically about what they're using and become very ethical in their storytelling of using data.
Okay. How should students and people go about with their privacy and ownership when they're using AI?
This is a big topic for not just students, but also teachers to understand. You cannot just copy and paste and put things, especially if a child is under the age of 13. We have a law called COPA, that's the Child's Online Protection Privacy Act. And we also have FERPA laws here, which basically means we have to minimize data collection and clarify, and teach faculty and educators and pre-service teachers how we use these tools. Okay, how is the application collecting the data? Who are they sharing the data with? Of course, if they're under the age of 13, we're not allowed to do that. And so we want to really kind of stress that in our education classes. But also we want to think about when we're selecting an application, and when you are using a language generation tool or any type of AI tool, who owns this data? Okay, is this your data? Is your picture is a picture of you that you upload, that you took, is that yours, or does that belong to the company that you're using? And I think we sometimes just give away information, not realizing who owns that data. And so this is probably a really critical issue that we really have to talk more about. Who owns the learning artifact? If you're going to create something, I remember when I was getting my doctoral degree, my PhD at the University of North Texas, I was strongly, encouraged never to use Google tools, Because if I ever wrote anything that I was going to publish, if you read the fine print and you're using Google Docs, you may not own that paper or that idea. Okay. And so we really want to think about who owns the learning artifact, and default to least data necessary. You want secure storage. So I always say, I use Office 365 more than I use Google now, because I know that data is mine. It's encrypted. It's stored on a secure server, and there's transparent consent. So above all, we want to remember as educators that, we want to protect our students. And of course, we want to build relationships with them. A computer can never replace that human element of teaching, and that matters the most. AI can support us in our learning, and I think will make a tremendous impact and probably can improve our knowledge. But teachers lead the classroom. They lead with empathy. We lead through relationships, through caring, through culture building, and hopefully critical thinking. So.
Yes, ma'am. I feel that's important because a lot of people don't understand that they don't own the document, they don't own the software, and they could be punching in data for outside of the education element for businesses. They could be punching out their data, and for all they know, other competitors are seeing this or have access to this data, and it's just not a good look, because none of your data is truly secured or yours.
Yeah, do the research, and that's just where higher ed needs to come in, and we need to train others on how do we evaluate these resources. And that's really what my field does. And so if you're interested in these topics, I really encourage you to look into the master's program in education technology, because these are the types of things that we talk about in that program.
Okay. So what's the future snapshot looking like, in your opinion, for AI?
It can go either way. We have a critical couple of years here to really kind of hopefully advocate for that human element. I don't know if the public is all aware of all of the rapid rate of decisions and changes being made. And that's really what's been hard with higher ed, is because we traditionally are slower to adapt. And with AI, there's alternatives now. And so we are going to have to go back and relearn things in our field. So just because we have a doctorate degree, or just because we have a degree and we've finished, that doesn't mean that we don't, or we may have to go back and rethink, okay, how is our field adjusting due to the AI revolution? And that's what's different about this revolution, is it is literally impacting every single industry.
Beautiful, Dr. Miller.
Thank you.
Thank you for breaking it down all the way from the core of AI and how it affects the classroom, but also how it could affect you in your regular overuse of AI.
Yeah. All right. Till next time.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you, guys.